Hi, Rosie.
Wait, say that again?
Hi, Rosie.
Oh, hi. How's the new digs?
Good. This is my office.
It looks amazing.
Pretty little pink office.
That's awesome.
It was a nursery before, and I never painted it.
Why would you? It looks great.
I mean, it was Caroline's room.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
Are you enjoying having more space?
I am when I get to use it. Jet just came home sick yesterday. So that's awesome. But and he's home for like a week.
Oh.
Because you never really know like what's really happening.
Right.
So, yeah. So we're doing it. I'm enjoying it.
Where is he at for?
He's at Children's Day Inn at 55th and Meridian.
Okay.
So it's like a 9 to 2:30 situation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is he feeling really terrible, or is he?
You know, he had 103-degree fever yesterday, and then he had another fever all last night. He was up all last night. So if I yawn, it's not because I'm bored. It's because I have a party animal son. But this morning it broke. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Hopefully it works out.
Does it make you like super nervous when your kid has a fever? Or at this point, are you like, it's fine, they're gonna be okay?
There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
You can medicate it and wait.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Look
at all these people.
Mm-hmm. Guys, just like we've done the last couple of days, we'll wait till about 9:02 and then I'll kick us off.
Steve, how's your new house?
It's awesome. I actually, you'll notice a lack of furnace behind me.
I know, I was going to say.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Do it up. I love it.
No, yeah, so it's great. It actually has two small rooms that are perfect for offices, so Audrey can work in her own little office and do lawyer things, and I can sit down here in the basement and do realtor things.
Very cool.
But we've been in renovation mode for like 3 weeks now.
Yeah. I know we still have to move a whole bunch of furniture from our old house to the new house.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't.
Where'd you move to?
40th and Guilford.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Not too far from where I was before.
No.
Okay, guys, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to another training, and almost the end of the week. So excited. Since I'll be unmuted for a lot of this, I just want to remind or warn everyone that I have a pup in my lap who snores and farts a lot. So if you hear that, it's not coming from me, it's from Poppy. So anyway, so we've got a panel going on today about dumpster fire transactions, and we have Steve Lunsford, Rex Fisher, Jess Martin, and Emily Burford here to kind of share their experience with that. So a couple other housekeeping notes before we kick off. So we don't have training tomorrow, although we do have a screening of Testing the Divide tonight at the office from 5 to 7. So if you want to come to that, you're more than welcome. Yeah, but then on Monday, our training will be on 1920s homes. It's provided by Pillar to Post. I'm really excited. I haven't heard it before, but I think we all deal with old homes so often that that'll be really fun. And then the one that I really want everyone to mark their calendars for is coming up a week from today. It's called Interrupting Racism. It's a program put on by child advocates. That one is from 10 to 12, so a little bit different than our normal, but it will be on Zoom. Says multiple times, but like we've been trying to get them to come in and talk to you guys for like years. So this feels like a huge win, and I hope everyone can make it. So that's it for housekeeping. To our lovely panelists this morning, could you open up and just do the huge who you are, how long you've been in real estate / how long you've been at Platt, and then where you live. Steve, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Steve Lunsford. I have been doing real estate for a little over 2 years now. I joined Platt in February, and I think I live in Millersville now.
Yeah, sure. That sounds right. Steve just moved.
Yeah,
so,
I'm right on the edge of it. So
that's great. Emily, how about you?
Hey everybody, I'm Emily Burford, and I have been in real estate 4.5 years, which is crazy. And I have been with Platt a little over a year. I think I started at the end of October last year with them. Previous to that, my business partner Betsy and I ran our own brokerage. And I live in Meridian Kessler Zone 2 near the State Fairgrounds, 40th and Guilford.
Emily, can we talk about how the new blue glasses that you're wearing are just phenomenal? They fit you and your personality so well.
Thanks. It was a big choice. It was a big choice. I really had to step out on my comfort.
Yeah, I feel like you 100% pull it off. They look amazing.
Thanks, Rex.
Okay, Jess, I feel like most people know you, but I'm going to make you introduce yourself anyway.
Hello, I'm Jess. I'm certain all of you know me. I've been in real estate 8 years. I've been at Platt. I actually just pulled up my LinkedIn because I was like, how long has it been? It's almost 5 years now. So it feels like a long time. And I live in Cottage Home.
That's perfect. Thanks, Jess. And Rex, remember to unmute yourself and tell us about yourself.
God bless you. My name is Rex Fisher. I've been with Platt since 2015. Live in Fountain Square. Was there another piece of this that I was supposed to answer?
No, that's perfect. You've been at Platt for as long as you've been in real estate. So
that is correct. Yes, I have. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so today we are talking about dumpster fire transactions. And if you've ever been around Rex, you know that phrase comes from him. So we are specifically talking about transactions that go wrong or, Zoom has this new feature where you either have to have a passcode or you have to be you have to put everyone in a waiting room before they come in. So I'm over here trying to think and talk, but then also letting people in to our Zoom room. I don't know. Anyway, so we were talking about transactions that went wrong / just transactions that are going to be really hard right off the bat. So think transactions where there's a divorce going on, an estate sale, a tax sale, bankruptcy, just things that are going to be a dumpster fire. So for our panelists, I'm guessing when I say those words, there is like one transaction that kind of springs to mind as like, oh yeah, this one was a shit show, or like, this is the one that, you know, went horribly wrong or was just a tough situation. Can you like briefly share what, like, give us the background of that transaction? Jess, can I have you go first?
Sorry. Yeah, you guys, I was so excited to be on this panel that I had a dumpster fire training this week, or dumpster fire transaction this week. Like, I did that for you guys.
Thank you for your sacrifice, Jess.
Yeah. Yeah, so when I think of a dumpster fire transaction, it's always like, think of all the things that Rosie just named there. Every one of those scenarios, a death in the family, a divorce, bankruptcy, someone is under like additional stress than just selling this house. So usually a dumpster fire transaction is because there are like heightened emotions in this transaction and someone is reacting really quickly, and those reactions usually cause just like a domino effect of everyone else's emotions and reactions. So mine this week, I had a duplex that I was selling. I'll try to do this quickly, but not miss out on any of the important pieces. So I had a duplex. We were actually splitting it and selling one side of it as a townhome. So this had to be an extended closing because my seller was open to selling the entire thing or just one half. And so she didn't start the parcel split process until we got the offer for just the one half. Rex's face. So she was very smart. She hired an attorney to do the parcel split and help through the process to make it as smooth as possible. That attorney advised her it would probably take around 60 days from the time we began to get through that. Well, we have COVID. So we all went into the transaction, I assumed, with the understanding that we were doing a 60-day close, but it could take longer. It seemed fine. We were just going through all the motions until yesterday was 60 days. So last week, all of a sudden, I had been told that the buyer was flexible on his lease and could extend it. The attorney advised us that the city was taking a little bit longer and she expected it would take 1 to 3 more weeks. I like to plan for worst case scenario. So I asked the agent if we could get an extension through the end of November. He said, not a problem. I'll talk to my buyer. Should be fine. I know his lease is flexible. Next day I get a call that he wants pre-possession. So we started to negotiate pre-possession, at which case we couldn't really agree on anything. He didn't really want to pay to be living in the house, which didn't make my seller very happy. He needed the weekend to think about it and calm down. Meanwhile, I get a text from the agent, hey, I'm going to get that pre-possession agreement over to you today. I think we're all good now. We're fine. Okay. So I'm waiting for that. I wake up Monday morning to a letter from the buyer, who happens to be a criminal defense attorney, on his letterhead stating he is suing my clients because he cannot close on the property and that he fully intends to move forward with closing. Yeah, Rex. He fully intends to move forward with closing on the 4th. Meanwhile, he can't move forward with closing because his lender needs the parcel split in order to approve his loan. So he's just not understanding the process, right? Like, He fully doesn't understand. I wish his agent, rather than just forwarding me that letter, would have taken a second, called his client, and said, dude, do you know what sending this letter is going to do? Do you still want the house? If he didn't want the house, fine, send the letter all day long. But he still wanted the house. And now he's threatening to sue the seller, who will also be his neighbor because it's a townhome, right?
Ooh.
Yeah.
That juju.
Dumpster fire, guys. Dumpster fire. Yeah, just all the bad things. So yeah, I mean, again, just heightened emotions, and not slowing down and like taking a step and really explaining. And the other agent, he's a great agent, right? Like he has done a wonderful job the entire process, but I think he was probably feeling a little burnt out from his buyer and the long weekend they had going through the prepossession debacle. And in that moment, he didn't slow down. And he admitted to me, he's like, man, I wish I would have talked to him before, like sending that letter, and made sure that was like what he wanted to do and fully explain it to him. Because once after my seller reacted to that letter, and I had to send her that letter, right? Once it ended up in my inbox. So once she reacted, and not in a positive way, she was like, well, no, withdraw that prepossession agreement you sent to them. Like, I don't want this guy living in my house. I can't blame her. He immediately regretted sending that letter, so I was told, and like wanted to speak to the seller on the phone, wanted to clear it up, and she wants nothing to do with him. And she's like, I will close on the property because I have to at this point, like legally, unless he wants out, but I'm not talking to him. I'm not giving him prepossession. We signed a mutual release yesterday, which was best for everyone. So it's over. It ended exactly how I thought it would end on Monday. I'm glad it ended that easily. I was worried about him suing more for random reasons. But I think we got through it, and we'll just list again. And now we can sell it as a townhome and close in 30 days because we're that much closer to the parcel split. So it will all be fine. So that's my dumpster fire transaction.
That was a good one. Yep, well done. Let's have Emily go. What's your transaction that comes to mind? It's a dumpster fire.
When Rosie asked me to do this training, I was like, I don't have a ton of like dumpster fire transactions. I feel like every transaction you can view like a dumpster fire, or at least challenges. Rarely does everything go right in a transaction. Maybe not dumpster fire, but I can think of 3 this year that I had, and I won't go into too much detail of them, but at least give you an overview. And when I was thinking about this and talking to everyone, I was thinking that there are 2 types of dumpster fires. One is agent related and one is client related. And so I think that those 2 things, there's a lot of crossover in how to handle them, but I think it's important. Important to like parcel those out because I had one agent related one where the agent did nothing, like nothing. Was late on inspection responses, was late on everything. And then the day before closing sent this like ridiculous form saying that they were requiring all this stuff. And I think I had a conversation with him where I gracefully told him he was the worst agent I've ever worked with. But kindly, he was like, you've actually done nothing in this. So that's one. We did get it closed and everything, and I was able to provide for my clients like the services that I wanted to and the level of service, but that was just stupid. The second one actually involved a real fire, which Rosie had asked me to talk about. I had a client whose house burnt down the day of photos for listing. And So that has been an interesting situation. It caught fire in May. We were supposed to list in May. Just this weekend, we accepted an offer on the lot. And so that transaction, I mean, it just was not what we were expecting at all. And just, so that was a real like client focus, like, how do I care for my client? How do I make sure that I'm answering questions? I had never been through that before. I had no expertise in how to manage that. I didn't know how long insurance would take. I didn't know the right answers to some of the questions that they had. And on top of it, we priced a lot on Meridian and Kessler, like literally that transaction or that intersection. And comping was hard. It was just difficult all around. The other transaction I had closed probably a month and a half ago. It was a home that I had sold to a couple 3 years ago, and they subsequently are getting divorced. And we didn't find out until the 11th hour after the title company flipped through a few pages that he was actually on some documents. So we had done the entire transaction without him, because it was my understanding from an attorney that we had the right to kind of move forward with just that person on mortgage, and that she was on title, that everything was taken care of. But that because there wasn't a divorce decree that finalized everything, we had done the whole transaction without him. And so I had to work my way back and then also convince him to come to closing and sign and do it with, expedite the process, but do it with kind of clarity and also keeping everything above board, because what I didn't want is to provoke a lawsuit against Platt or myself with that gentleman because he wasn't represented. So those are the three that I can think of this year.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing them. Steve, how about you go next?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to talk about two of them. I'm going to try to be brief. Both of them have lawyers involved. So I'm going to talk first about an estate sale and second about a divorce sale. Both of which, they involve a lot of emotions, and when emotions get involved, which they usually do at some point, you run into trouble. So the divorce was one where, believe it or not, I was actually written into the divorce decree. Like, my name was in the divorce decree, and they basically said anything that the husband and wife can't agree on, you decide, which is insane.
Steve, did they ask you if they could do that?
No. I'm like, I did not sign this document. What? So, the way that the attorney set it up was so just poorly thought through. The guy was going to be living in the house. She's getting all the proceeds of the house. He's supposed to be doing minor repairs if needed. I'm like, hey, would you like, put light bulbs in the, burn out light bulb spots? No, I don't think I'm going to do that. So finally I ended up having to go back to the lawyer and say, hey, the way that this is structured this isn't going to work. He doesn't have any benefit coming out of selling the place, and he doesn't care. He doesn't care if it sells for $100,000 or $220,000. So he had no vested interest. So eventually, I had them amend the decree to get him out of the place and give her power of attorney for to basically execute the sale of the home on his behalf, but only in his very limited power of attorney. It was, the whole thing was just, it was messy. I wish that I would have had the opportunity to get in front of the attorney so we could have set this up to be a lot less painful for everybody out of the gate. The second one is the estate sale, which was referred to me by an attorney. So, to me, it wasn't a big sale. It was out in like freaking Martinsville, probably, $150,000, $160,000 home. The real prize is if I do a good job here, the lawyer sends me, stuff for years to come. So, you know, I took it on, said, no problem. I'll put a Platt sign out in Martinsville. They told me, hey, you know, this is roughly what I think this is what we owe on it. And I said, okay, so I'm going to go in here and say, okay, this is our floor. This is the least we can take for the house. The daughter was in college. It was just a bad memory of her dad. And she, you know, really wanted nothing more than just be free of it. I don't think I talked to a single person on the phone about it other than the attorney the entire time. And then what ended up happening, they weren't entirely correct on what the mortgage payoff was, and they didn't have the money to close the gap and close the transaction. So they were about $2,000 short, maybe a little bit more than that. And what I ended up having to do just to get it done was I just said, look, guys, once the life insurance gets here, send me $2,000 or send Platt $2,000. And you know, we're gonna push this across the finish line and be done. You know, whether or not I'll ever see that money is, you know, it's to be determined. She just texted me yesterday and said the life insurance was going to be dispersed next week. So they seem like good people. I think they'll make good on it. But whenever you do something like that, you kind of go in with the expectation that there's a pretty good chance you never see that money. And you know, it was what it was, and you know, we got it done. So those are the two that I have. You know, it's attorneys, man. I think you got to keep them close, whether it's a divorce or an estate sale. You know, they definitely hold a lot of influence in both places. And if you aren't in sync with them, that causes you a lot of trouble.
Yeah, that's so good. Thanks for sharing, Steve.
Yeah.
Man, also all of these, I just want to give you guys a big hug. God, they sound terrible. Okay, Rex.
When I look at a transaction and try to assess, like what's the predictive level of risk for this being really, really hard. And I look at a dumpster fire transaction, if you will, as something that steals emotional margin at a disproportionate level from the task at hand. Typically what I find is it comes down to primarily the individuals in the equation, their level of perceived control and trust of the other parties involved, which doesn't always start off on the best foot from a transaction anyways. Everybody is tempted at least to think they're getting screwed, or that, you know, a collaborative approach is not being pursued. But I think when someone feels that they are out of control, and the more they feel out of control, the more disingenuous narratives slip in, the more the heightened opportunity or propensity for constructing conspiracy theories, for disengaging and shutting down, for over kind of steamrolling everybody. And so, you know, when you know, one that is probably just, you know, taking the most emotional margin from me, and I've had a number of these. It's when I have someone who's terminally ill, and they feel justifiably like they're losing control. And they're faced with decisions every week where they have to decide to trust, and it doesn't feel real great. And I find often, you know, one right now, you know, I've got, the husband has Parkinson's. It's progressing faster than they thought. They thought they had a good 10 years. They don't. And they're having to sell their home, which I helped them find years ago, and then help redesign to be ADA compliant and help maintain a high quality of life for as long as they could. And it just ended up being about a third of what they thought they were going to have. We get in the process, and we get about a week in, and they're just going, is this going to sell? I can't believe we don't have an offer yet. What's happening? And just walked him through, told him, hey, I'm going to communicate with you every Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the morning. We'll go through everything. Did that for a couple of weeks. Then, you don't have to do that. Let's go to, once a week. Okay, we can do that. No, wait, we have, and just it moves, right? And the reason that it moves is because the anxiety is so high, the feeling of loss of control is so high, that they're in a threat state constantly. And now we throw COVID in there, so they're sitting at home by themselves, and this couple, this husband is slipping away, in their house every day, all day. And it kind of hit a peak. I actually had brought a buyer, was the only agent in the transaction, not the dual agent, only representing the seller. And navigating an inspection response, found out in the process of the inspection response that the buyer has COPD. And the home she's buying is a 100-year-old home. It's a very nice 100-year-old home, and it has been fully renovated in the past 6 years or so. But she was...
Rex, what is that? If I don't know, I'm guessing
that is a degenerative lung ailment that ultimately will, likely kill her.
Yeah.
But she has to, coming out of that and the way that the inspection report was written, she had some concerns and had to take some extra steps for air quality and whatnot. And we are legitimately getting on the other side of it. But in that process, my client's emotional margin was so low, and their anxiety so high that at one point, I sat down with them, and I mean, they were convinced that I had a conflict of interest, that I was trying to work a deal for the buyer. It's just this whole narrative had played out. And these are people I've known for 10 years, and they're wonderful. They're absolutely wonderful. I love them dearly. But about every time I would sit down and talk with them, they would be in tears. And these things that were this big felt this big. And the dumpster fire of it was really walking through that with someone, and really losing the fight to not let that dominate my thoughts, and to an unproductive end. Because it's a very emotionally intense thing to be engrossed in. And I'll tell you, if I could give every bit of commission and pay another like $10,000 just to know that this was done, I would cut that check today. Because it is that hard. And we will get on the other side of it. I want them to know we will get on the other side of it. And if I could give that to them, and loose myself of it today, 100%, do it right now.
Rex, what's happening in that transaction right now? Are you guys pending? Are you still with the buyer who has?
Oh yeah. Oh, we were friggin' landing this plane. Yeah, we worked it out. The biggest challenge of it all, and I actually had to have this conversation last week. I just sat down with him. I said, look, I know I'm asking for a lot. but I'm going to be really honest, and it's going to sound really cocky. I'm the best option you've got for getting you out of this. And oh, by the way, they're building their next, home, which is by his specialists of the community. And so they've got to have the money from this sale by the end of this month to pay the contractor for renovating this home to care for this man, or this whole deal unravels, right? So it all implodes. But I actually have a backup set where if for some reason this deal doesn't go through, right, I've got another buyer lined up who will come in and for almost the same amount do the deal for cash. But it's calling it a favor to get it done. But no joke, even telling them, this is what I'm putting in place, just begging for them to trust me to get it to the finish line was the most necessary, hardest thing. And I guarantee you they have to make a choice multiple times a day to give that trust.
Rex, thanks for sharing that. That actually leads us right into our next question. So I'll ask the rest of you three. Jess, let's start with you. What was the hardest part of that transaction this week, and how did you get through it? What would you have done differently? Like, all those reflection questions.
I think the hardest part of any transaction where you have a hurdle like this, I'm constantly kind of reflecting back and saying to myself, like, what could I have done to avoided this? So it's always kind of like second guessing myself, and making sure moving forward, I'm keeping my emotions out of it. And that's very challenging, to keep my feelings towards that person really neutral, because I want my client to decide what is the best way to respond for them. And then weighing out those options with them too, and talking to them through, like, hey, we can do X, but this might happen. Or you can do X and this might happen. And we're never going to have the answers. And so I have to answer a lot of things like, I'm not quite sure, And that's really hard, because when someone is going through something hard, you want to tell them it's going to be okay. And it is going to be okay. Like, we're going to get through the other side, but I need them to make the decisions and feel comfortable in their decisions and ask all the questions they need to. And when I don't have the answers, I have to be okay with that, and hopefully point them in a direction where they can find answers. Luckily, this transaction, she already had an attorney engaged because of the parcel split. So she had some legal questions, and she was able to go and ask her attorney. And, the attorney they give non-answers too, right? So, but she was able to make decisions and move forward, and I think she feels really comfortable. I think there's a sense of relief for her. And a lot of times getting through this, in the moment they feel really anxious and stressed because you're delivering typically bad news or news they don't want to hear. But when they come out through the other side, there tends to be a sense of relief that hard part is past them. So yeah, I think just keeping emotions in check, it's always the challenge.
Yeah, that's great, Jess. And what about for you, those transactions you mentioned, hardest part, and what did you learn from it, or how did you get through it?
I think what Jess said resonates a lot with me. You got to keep your emotions in check. And I tend to be like, one that really wants to fight hard for my clients. And so making sure there's a really healthy balance of like not getting too far ahead of myself emotionally. I think there's a lender that I work with who often says that bad news doesn't get better with age. And so when you're in a dumpster fire situation, the tendency is to want to tell your client exactly what's going on immediately. And I think you should do that, but I would add to that, but it also doesn't get better without next steps. So kind of what Jess said of like troubleshooting, or even what Rex is talking about of, hey, I've got a secondary plan here. So I think when you're in a situation that you're watching unfold that could have some major challenges, it's sitting down and kind of strategizing with yourself. What are all the ways that we could get this to the finish line and also have integrity and also keep professionalism and then serve our clients? And so I often want to go immediately to my client when something bad has happened, or tell them immediately, but it doesn't help unless I'm offering my professional expertise. And so sometimes I have to check myself and just say, okay, wait a minute. How are we going to work through this instead of getting caught up in the motion of it? What does that play out in my mind? And I often do that, where Jess can tell you, I call her pretty frequently to be like, wait, can I just say this out loud to see if this makes sense? And I think that that's where the community of Platt and other agents are really helpful, is to just troubleshoot a little bit. And so you can have the conversation, deliver the news, but also have the next steps for your client. So I think that is really wise in terms of how to handle those situations. Because I think that when people can handle bad news better, when they can see the big picture and know that there's a way out, instead of being like, hey, by the way, we've got a major problem. I'll call you later and tell you what we can do to fix it. That's bad. Don't do that with your clients. Or at least say, I don't know the answers, but this is where I think I need to look, and this is what I'm going to do, and then this is how I'm going to get back to you about it. I think in terms of like the situation where it's a bad circumstance that just happens, in like terms of the fire, I think just remember that you're human too. So like my clients called me that morning and said the house is on fire, and I said, okay, fine, I'll be there. Like, so I just showed up at the house, and then they had a little baby. So you guys know from the Platt page, I rallied you guys to see, hey, do we have a place that they can stay? Hey, I went to Target and bought her stuff like underwear and diapers. Like she lost everything, like got clothes for them, so just, I think, make sure that you're caring for that person too in the moment where it's appropriate. I mean, I had a little bit of a relationship with her, but I think sometimes in the tendency of a really stressful situation, we either back off because we don't know what to do. But I'd encourage you just to press in to the humanity of something, because I emailed my girlfriends that day, and one of them made them a dozen cookies. It maybe didn't matter. It doesn't help us sell their house or fix the problem, but I think just like making sure that you're caring for people along the way. This is just a little side note, but I think that this is one thing that I would encourage people to do. I think in real estate, oftentimes, and at least for me, I struggled a lot at the beginning of seeing transactions related to my livelihood, because I was the breadwinner of our family and because I was the one that was providing. And so when things got hard, there was heightened emotions on my end, because it felt like, well, if this doesn't close, then what happens is that transactions turn into transactions instead of serving people and clients. And it's a trick that all of us can play. So if there's a lot of new agents out here, I would just encourage you, like, remember you're dealing with people and your livelihood's going to be taken care of. It will all work out usually. But we can sometimes forget to just be people in the process and push things through so that we can make sure that we close those transactions or do whatever. And I just think that it's important to remember that we're dealing with clients. And then I think in terms of one last thing that I wrote down as notes is, I heard this maybe in February of this year before Corona, and it kind of stuck with me, and it was a totally different context, but it's something that I visit often when I'm really, to be candid, like pissed off at another agent or frustrated at somebody. And that's that most people are not inherently bad people. So and the context it was given to me is that situation and conflict happens first because people don't know any better. If they don't know any better, maybe they don't care or they're immature about the situation. And then if they're not immature, maybe they just are really bad people and they just don't care at all and they want to screw you. But there's those 2 steps ahead of somebody being a bad person. And so for me, that has just been a really good mental check, that when I get frustrated with another agent, more than likely it's because they don't know about how something really happens. Like this one agent that I talked about at the beginning of the year, like he was sending documents that don't even make sense. He just didn't know. And so I can get frustrated, or I can be like, you just don't know. Okay. Like I can get frustrated about that, or we can work through it. Or sometimes there's people who don't care. They don't care about the rules. They don't care about the process. And so navigating that is a little bit tough, but that's their problem. And so I think in terms of agents, when you're dealing with that kind of conflict, that's always been really helpful to me, is saying like, they're not inherently evil people. They're just trying to figure out how to navigate this with what they have. And that tends to diffuse me personally so that I don't get so emotionally involved in the process.
That's so good, Emily. Yeah, I think that transaction you had with the fire, like, one, I just like admire you so much for how you handled that and just like stepped in and weren't just a realtor, but like you were a community member and you kind of harnessed your community to make that situation better. Yeah, we actually ended up knowing those people. It's Jason's boss is the person whose house burned down. It just like became like just this really personal thing to me in my life too, of like, man, like, I don't know, like, I don't think most of us probably haven't lived through a fire burning our house down, but like, that sucks a lot. And I just think that's a really beautiful way that you as a realtor and a friend like could step up and be present in that moment. So good work. Steve, can you, yeah.
One thing that Emily
You stuck the landing.
over. One thing she said there that I think every agent needs to do. I mean, there were lots of things, but Emily mentioned that she often calls just to like have a conversation and like hear how she is like processing the news that she's going to have to deliver and the conversation she's going to have to walk through with her client. I do the same thing. Like Emily calls me, but I have agents that I call too. I think everyone should have like those people to call, and I'm always happy to be that person that you call and just like talk through it. Again, it doesn't have to be because you have questions. Like Emily usually doesn't have questions. She knows the answers, but we're just talking through it. And that allows her to get her emotions like centered so that she can go and have that conversation. So I just think that's so good. And I love that Emily does that.
That's so good. Thanks for adding that, Jess. Steve, okay, hardest parts of those transactions you mentioned. What did you learn? What did you do differently? All that stuff.
I mean, in the divorce transaction, I think the thing that surprised me the most was, you cannot underestimate how high emotions run and what emotional make people do. I mean, I had this gal would be going over to the house to do like, some repairs or paint or do stuff like that. And she literally took scissors to his tuxedo and she wrote like horrible stuff all over his bed sheets and would like leave like nasty stuff. Yeah. I mean, it was really nasty. And, I think that made it hard because, a couple times she started to point some of her aggression at me, and I had to be like, "Hey, same team. I am here working for you, and I'm doing a lot of work for you. So let's not fight." So there's that, and I think, what I learned with that one, if I were to do something differently, I did not know that she was going to try to write me into that divorce decree. And I told her, like, hey, bring me into this as early as possible. I could have had a lot of this off in the past if I would have been talking to the attorney that was writing that decree, so we could write it so everybody was getting what they need, and we could, smoothly move the property without going through all the fixing that I had to do because it was done in kind of a silly way on the front end. And then on the other one, I think the hardest thing was just, I was trying, the gal that was at school, she didn't want to be distracted by her studies. So, I was trying to insulate her from the whole thing. I would literally contact her for nothing except for if it was absolutely necessary. That was difficult. I think I did a good job of it. But a lot of times I think these people that inherit these estates, they don't entirely understand the situation that they're in. They don't know what they owe on that mortgage. And more often than not, and this is what really got us, was, this kid in college, she's not making mortgage payments. So that's getting added every month from when, dad died. So, I think you just have to account for all those things. You need to know exactly what that number is. Not it's around this, exactly what the number is, because you got to get enough out of that property so that they can walk away. So I'm actually glad you asked that question, because we realtors, we can go on for hours commiserating over all the stuff, but hopefully, this is helpful and somebody learns from, me, my pain.
Yeah, totally. That's what this is all about. I just in case people didn't read the chat, I just want to read what Rex just posted, because what the actual F. Like I said, I had one situation where the spouse went into the house, pooped on the stove, and turned the burner on low. The husband wasn't back in the house for 2 days. That is some dark ass shit. Oh my God.
It really was some dark ass shit.
Yeah. Oh my God. I cannot. Yeah, that must have smelled so bad. Yikes.
Bonus points on creativity, though. That was
so much creativity. Yeah. Wow.
Just for reference, that person actually was evil. Like, how I told you?
Yes. That's amazing.
I think there was something owing on both sides of that.
Yeah, 100%. Oh my God. Jess, I did not prep you for this question, so sorry in advance, but can you talk about how a divorce transaction specifically is different? Like, I'm trying to hold those pieces in my mind of like how that works. There's like the attorney with the divorce decree. Can you talk, well, like I'm sure you've walked agents through this. Like, can you talk a little bit about how that's different?
Well, I've walked clients through it. And so with any of these transactions, I would say the most important thing you can do is do the pre-work. So do preliminary title. Tell title company exactly what the situation is and what your concerns are, so that you know who is on the paperwork and who needs to sign, and then ask title how everything needs to be conveyed. Right? So asking those questions, don't assume that you know exactly how it's all laid out. Because we'll find with every situation, like Emily had mentioned, I think, like she didn't know someone was on title. She even did like the pre-work, right? So just don't assume, don't make those assumptions no matter what your client is telling you. Just always do the homework and double check. And then when that does happen, like it did for Emily, her client knows that she had done all the things up front, and this was just, unforeseen, right? So always do that no matter what, or no matter how your clients are answering the questions. And then on a divorce, it depends what side you're on. I've had tons of people who are buying a house who are also going through a divorce, and their lender is going to need that divorce decree too. Yeah, I mean,
Wait, why would people do that?
They live in a house together. They need to move their kids to another house.
Oh, okay. Yeah, got
house.
it. Sorry, for some reason I thought they were buying a house together, but then also getting divorced at the same time.
No. So like one party is buying a house. So again, like being very upfront with the lender and telling them, hey, they're going through a divorce. What do you need in order to close this transaction? So I think just always asking those questions to the other vendors, because we're realtors. We know the property. We're not title agents. We're not lenders. So just make connections with people that you know that can answer those questions and guide you and your clients through each step of the way.
That's so great. Okay, I have 2 final questions for you guys, and these are both going to be like, I'm not going to call on you, just like answer if you have an answer. These specific transactions that we're talking about, the divorce, estate, bankruptcy, all of this, like, ugh, it just, in my mind, sounds very legally tricky. Just feels like there's a lot of ways that this can go sideways. So as you're thinking through whatever those transactions are, like, is there anything like legally that agents need to keep in mind that like, okay, this is what I need to do to have my shit together so I don't get in legal trouble? Anything that you would add?
I would say that with my, the divorce one that I dealt with, I think I called Jess about this too and was like, hey, I want to make sure that the brokerage and that I'm personally protected as well. And so just asking those questions. So like, how do I word an addendum to the purchase agreement? Is there extra verbiage? So sometimes I think Betsy, my business partner, is really good at this. She spells things out in purchase agreements just to make sure that there's clarity of like what some terms, whether it's a changed term for a PA or anything else like that. Like take the time to write it out. Remember, you're not an attorney, but run it past a colleague or, you know, a manager or something like that. Because for us, I felt a little bit better knowing that I had some documentation that showed, even if it wasn't legally binding, showed my intent and my effort. So that, you know, and I think also like recording things and keeping track of communications. Like if there is a phone call that happens with somebody, making sure that you're following up with an email and just making that extra effort, because I think that I'm not an attorney, but I think that can go a long way in terms of showing what your intent was to make sure that you protect yourself and you protect the brokerage, to be honest. So.
Rosie, I have a little something to add on to, I think is really good. I think there are a number of situations where we look at the individual. I mean, you have kind of 3 general categories of, you know, reasons that these situations come up, or these, you know, dumpster fire transactions play out. It's either a situational reality or relational reality, where you have someone who's just, they're not relationally healthy, you know, or you have external factors that are playing out, you know, such as a huge market shift or, you know, global pandemic or what have you. But being able to identify specifically around, you know, the individuals that play and going, you know what, we have a situation here where out of the gate, I'm seeing combative behavior. I'm seeing a propensity to try to slay anything that moves. I'm seeing just the antithesis of a collaborative approach. You know, or in a situation where I'm going to be very, very challenged to bring my value and to these clients and do this in a way that is healthy. I think a lot of times we should strongly consider walking from that deal. walking from serving that situation. Not always, but I think we take on a lot of transactions that if we tallied up what it took and what it did to us and what it really cost us, I think we would be astounded by what the delta was there in the negative. And then the two is secondarily, 99% of this battle is won on the relational end of being able to stay ahead of terms of the agreement or protections in the contract. So the more work that we can do on the end of communicating to those clients, diffusing kind of powder keg situations, and usually in these, there's kind of, you can identify the few areas where these typically always go bad. In a divorce, you kind of know, like there are milestones here where this typically can zig where it zags, right? In an estate, at some point, the siblings are all going to get pissed off at each other, argue outside, the whole deal is going to freeze up, and so you can proactively build towards those solutions. And I've even found that at the start, setting out and saying, hey, I want you to know, here's how I typically see this go. Be ready to have some conflict with your siblings, or, be ready that you're going to see this and it's going to piss you off and you're going to have to get your hands around it. And I see it blow up deals all the time, and that's not what you want. The more that we can do on the front end to set that expectation and then stay out in front of it, typically the better shot we're going to have at bringing it home and doing it in a way that is not going to dominate our day.
That's so great. Thanks, guys. I was going to ask you one more question, but we are right at time, so I'm going to finish this out by saying, has everyone seen Michelle Freeman's new haircut? Because it's phenomenal, and she rocks the bangs better than anyone I've ever seen. So I just wanted to call attention to that for everyone. Oh, it's so good. Okay, no training tomorrow. Screening of the movie tonight. 1920 Films on Monday. Interrupting Racism on next Thursday. That's all I got for you. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.